My great interest in the mechanics of the past stems from when I was like our Jack, when I was quite a small boy, going along the canal from Bolton to Bury and seeing the remains of all the old coal mines and cotton mill engine houses, and some of them were actually still working. That's really why I've created all this lot here in my backyard. It's sort of a vain attempt to hang on to childhood memories, I suppose. I suppose you think that I'm here to actually knock this thing down, but there's so few of these things left now that, I'm here to preserve it. We've just put 16 new iron bands round, to preserve our industrial heritage. This is the Bancroft Mill Engine Truss, and up until 1978, there was a big weaving shed out the back, and this is all that remains of it. The engine, the chimney and the boiler, and it's situated at Barnoldswick on the Lancashire and Yorkshire borders. We've turned it now into an industrial heritage centre where everybody can come and see the original mill engine in steam. There used to be loads of engines like this where I come from, every coal mine and every spinning mill had one, but alas, they've all gone now. This is the Bolton to Bury Canal, and as a small boy I used to come along here with my father on my bicycle, and to me it was quite an exciting world. There were like coal mines and cotton mills and all sorts of wonderful things like incline railways. Really interesting stuff if you like industrial archaeology. Like this crane here, the first time I saw it, it were almost complete. And now, of course, there's hardly anything left of it. We got all the brass on and chimney on it and the chain on it and everything. And what it used to do, the boats used to pull up here and they had boxes in full of coal. And the crane used to lift one out and swing round and drop it down into the paper mill. Britain was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, and although machinery like this is now sadly decaying, for more than 200 years we led the world in harnessing the power of coal, water and steam to drive the heavy machinery that made mass production possible. It's an era that I only saw the end of, but I wish I'd have seen more of it. It's only within the last 40-odd years that our great industries have disappeared. In the 60s, the skylines of Lancashire mill towns still bristled with chimneys, and the view of Sheffield by night was something like Dante's Inferno, with the glow of the furnaces lighting the sky, and of rivers of glowing white-hot molten steel flowing through the smoke. But as the mines, the mills and the factories and the steel workses and the engineering workses closed, the demolition men moved in, and the machinery that had made Britain the workshop of the world came under the wrecker's hammer. The scrap merchants became wealthy as they stripped the brass and anything else that was worth having from the engines. Most people didn't care about what was going on, but there were a few who realised that it was all a bit tragic, and that if something wasn't done about it, there'd be nothing left to show for one of the most important parts of our history. People started to restore old engines, and steam locomotive preservation societies began to appear. 30 miles an hour! Thanks to the interest and dedication of these people, a small part of our industrial story has been preserved for future generations. I'm off now on a tour of Britain in search of our industrial past and the people who've restored a great deal of it to save it from the scrapman. And so future generations can see what a wonderful race Great Britain at one time was in the engineering field. My interest is mainly in steam, but the earliest form of power is one that's still with us. I went down to Shropshire to meet a man who's taken on a job in his back garden that's even bigger than anything I've got in mine.
I was in a sad way.
Yeah.
No machinery left.
No.
That had fallen down some years ago and been sold for scrap.
Peter Lewis has spent the last 16 years restoring this windmill round the back of his house.
I have to remember to take a ladder away each day.
The windmill that Peter's restoring is a tower mill, and the sails are attached to the cap at the top. Oh, this is the bit that makes it face into the wind, eh?
Yes, 24 hours a day that goes round, keeps it facing the wind.
Yeah, it's really carpentry on a grand scale, this, isn't it?
Aye.
Great lumps a foot square and 2 foot square and 18 inches square. Yeah, and I believe you can disconnect it here and make it all go down by hand in
That's right.
case of disaster.
You've got to have some means of coping if the fan goes wrong. So this is what we do.
High technology.
Well, it works.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Put the handle on. And off we go.
Oh, roundabout job.
Free tour.
See, the jolly miller up here and he's smoking, thunder and lightning and a force 10 gale blowing.
Aye.
Yeah. Tower mills aren't the only kind of windmill. My travels took me to East Anglia, where I found another type called the post mill. If you want to see a good example of a post mill, East Suffolk is the place to come. Like the East Suffolk post mills were reputed to be amongst the best in the world, and here at Saxted Green is a wonderful example of one. The fantail on a post mill is much lower, and that's because it's not just the top that turns to face the sails into the wind, but the whole windmill. So with a post mill you can turn the whole building round, and if you've not got any wind, the corn grinding comes to an halt. Hello, Jonathan. Now then.
Hello, Fred. Nice to see you.
Oh, what's this operation you're performing at present?
Well, the old mill has got what we call tail-winded,
Yeah.
which it very rarely does, and that means it wasn't facing the wind properly.
Yeah.
So we just have to get a little helping hand to get it into the wind.
Yeah. How many tons are you actually turning round with this handle?
Well, I reckon it's about 18 tons. There's about 6 tons of sails altogether, and 2 tons of stones and the superstructure. Do you want to have a go?
Yeah.
You're a strong chap.
Quite fantastic.
Yeah. Yes.
Wait a minute, it's quite easy, isn't it?
Oh, yes. You'll be all right when you get to the next parish. Yes.
You'd never get 10 mile an hour up. This has got to be really one of the finest examples of corn grinding windmill technology. But of course, for windmills you need wind. Water was a much more reliable source of power, and you can still see plenty of examples of working water mills around the country. Muncaster Mill is near Ravenglass in Cumbria, and the miller's wife Pam. A beam engine like this is a magnificent sight, and in the days of Queen Victoria, as well as being used to provide power for industry, engines like this started to bring improvements to domestic life. As the Industrial Revolution progressed and the population grew, the demand for clean water grew as well. Because it provided such an efficient method of pumping water, the beam engine became the basic working machine of the water industry. And it was with the building of pumping stations in the 19th century that the beam engine technology reached its peak. Tees Cottage Pumping Station is on the River Tees at Darlington. My little balancing act demonstrates the smoothness of the precision engineering.
They're stuck on with super glue, Fred, and it's really a bit of a kidology, you know, for the kids.
Yeah.
It's not right, but... No.
I don't think it's stuck on, that.
You don't reckon?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Thing is getting it back on. Here goes. Hey.
First time, how about that then? That was good.
T's cottage is interesting because you can see here the beginning of the demise of the beam engine. Because just next door there's a gas pumping engine that worked alongside the beam engine from 1914 before replacing it completely in 1926.
It's quite a rare engine. Science Museum likes this engine.
Yeah. I must say I've never seen a gas engine as big as this.
Well, it's a big fella. It's one of the bigger ones in the country.
Yeah.
We got this running about 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And quite a risky business because we thought we were going to put all the gas heating out down Connerscliff Road.
Oh, yeah. Or cooking the turkeys.
Or cooking the turkeys. Nothing coming out the gas cookers.
Ah, yeah. In spite of new types of engines like this one being introduced, the steam engine didn't just disappear. Smaller engines were used for the manufacture of all sorts of domestic products. I found an interesting example of this when I did a restoration job up near Penrith. This is Wetherick's Country Pottery in Cumbria, and this wonderful thing behind me here is a blunger. And a blunger, I thought they were kidding me when they mentioned like blunger, but that's its real name. And believe it or not, this is the last steam-driven one in existence. And when I came here about 5 years ago, the thing was like ready for falling into the pit, which mixes the clay up. And its whole sort of function is, over the road there were a big clay pit in the olden days, and they dug out the clay, which had contained a lot of pebbles, and they put it in this pit and added water and then started off the machinery, and it stirred it all up till it were like raw milk chocolate, and the stones fell to the bottom, and then they pumped off the liquid clay off the top, and it went down into a lagoon over the back here, where when it had settled, the clay settled on the bottom,